Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, which is all about getting inspired by looking at real world Power Apps examples. My name is Dougie Wood, I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm also joined by Jay, who is our Head of Business Applications.
Hello everyone, how are you doing?
So today what we're going to be doing is, me and Jay have cherry picked some examples of Power Apps, and they're all quite different of what they do. And the idea of today's webinar is that hopefully you'll see some examples of Power Apps that you've not seen before or not considered before, and it'll give you some food for thought about how potentially Power Apps could be used inside of your organization. Now, as I say, the examples, most of them are just proof of concepts that we've built. They're not real world production. They haven't got real data in them and things like that. They are just proof of concept types to give you a bit of an idea. So take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt, because you might see something and think, oh, actually, we're looking at it in this scenario, but actually it could be used for a totally different scenario. We just wanted to just kind of talk about some of the scenarios, some of the examples, just to give you a bit of food for thought. So on that note, I'll hand over to Jay to start walking us through some of these examples.
Cheers, Dougie. Like you say, a lot of these are just going to be more about, the art of the possible rather than is this, working exactly how I would need it for my system or for my business. But really, I just want to show you kind of like 8 or 9 things that we've built recently that I think really are kind of a bit thought-provoking and show the capabilities of what we can really provide within the Power Platform, especially within the context of Canvas apps. So first app that we want to talk about today is a purchase order system that we've recently created. So first things first, what we did when we built this was focus on kind of a unified look and feel and make sure that this isn't it doesn't feel like your standard out the box Power App Canvas app. We wanted to make sure that there was a rich element of branding and theming, and so what you can see through here is more of a use of modern style design, and you can see that in the gallery that we've got there front and center. This is also kind of exemplified as well when we pop open the create a new purchase order. You'll see here, this isn't your standard out the box Canvas app form. What we've got here is, of course, it's a form and it's got all the inputs that you need, but we've got it in a more kind of modern look and feel in relation to how that content is on the page. So on the left hand side, we've got all the key elements that you'll need to fill out. Of course, that's got all your validation, your checks and balances, all the bits and pieces you need and expect from a form. And then on the right hand side, we've essentially got what we would call a subgrid. And what that allows us to do is add kind of child data to the primary form. And what that does, we click add new item, that pops open a subform, and then we've got a similar interface to allow you to add new items and bits and pieces into that purchase order there. So if we just go back, we'll do the good old Blue Peter. Here's one I did earlier, and there's an example of a purchase order that we have raised in this instance to purchase a laptop, and you can see it's fully filled out with an email going to Mr. Bill at Microsoft, and all the items on the right hand side, the line items that are part of the purchase order. What you can see here is that we've got the calculations tallying up at the bottom, so you've got the clear understanding of what the cost is for the business for that piece. And then off the back of this, there's a whole set of processes and kind of next steps that come with your purchase order. Obviously, the first one would be the approval. Here's a set of example purchase orders that are just kind of sitting with me as examples. I get to open this, look at this. Very similar interface. It's got all that consistency that we talked about at the top of the call. But now there's contextual bits and pieces that I can do as an approver. So here I can review this and then I can identify who I can push this through to within our organization to actually be the final financial approver of this purchase order. Once that is selected and done, I then have got the ability to then approve this and then push this through to the next step.
I think that's quite an important part of this system, is that we can have different interfaces depending on who you are. So as somebody who's kind of submitting a purchase order, you will see one potential type of view. Someone who's approving them might get a slightly different interface to them. So we can really tailor them. And I think out of kind of all the solutions potentially out there for purchase order systems, building it in a Canvas app will really allow you to customize the user interface to be how you want it to be. I mean, we've tried to get this as simplistic as possible in the user interface, but there's nothing to stop us from adding more kind of buttons if you wanted to automate something, if you wanted to print something, if you wanted to do an additional step. It's all very customizable. And that's why we see a lot of people looking to use Power Apps for things like purchase order systems, to remove the need for things like Xero or Sage or Traderify. I'm trying to remember all the other purchase order systems which are out there at the moment, but all of these different third-party non-Microsoft products are very expensive. When actually you relate it back to a Canvas app, most of your users, if not all of them, will be licensed for Canvas apps anyway. So yes, there will be an initial upfront cost to build a Power App, but then you've got it. There's no more additional kind of licenses needed. So I think this is a fantastic example. Yeah, just back to you, Jay.
Yeah, no, really, really spot on. And I think it comes back to the whole point and purpose of this call today. It's the art of the possible, and why would you want to go down the route of a Canvas app? And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dougie, for a number of great reasons that, we can simplify that process. We can make savings in terms of kind of what you're paying out for sometimes very costly subscriptions for very niche tasks. And we can provide solutions that kind of box that niche task off in a very cost-effective manner, utilizing the Power Platform. And
like we were saying before, this scenario is just for obviously purchase ordering, but you could apply this same structure to almost anything. I mean, you could build on top of it and actually have like the invoicing processing part of it built into this. You could take this, you could use this interface for something that was completely nothing to do with purchase orders, invoices, or finance at all. You could use a very similar interface for this for tracking all sorts of different types of processes.
100%. And just to kind of nicely kind of dovetail into that kind of same but different, we've got that it's a very similar interface here. We've got the read-only interface, but we're now in the final stages of raising this purchase order. This has been approved, this has been signed off, everybody's done the checks and balances that they require to do within the organization, but now we fundamentally just need to generate the purchase order. So we're now in raise purchase order, and what we've got is the ability to then click this button, and then from the system, we've generated a fully complete purchase order that's got the supplier information, the delivery information. It's got all the names, dates, values that you require as part of your purchase order. And that really kind of speaks to what you were saying there, Dougie. We can build something once, and then we can just kind of iterate and evolve on top of that to solve numerous business use case and problems within the context of the original solution. Yeah, Dougie, any more on that one before we step into the next?
No, let's move on to the next.
Excellent. So what we've got here is an example of our corrective and preventative action system. That is not easy for me to say. I've been practicing that all day. We also know that as our CAPA system internally within the organization. What we've got here is your kind of at-a-glance dashboard. Again, what we've got is same but different. We've got a design methodology where we want to have consistency of navigation down the left-hand side. That navigation follows you through wherever you are within this application. So you can get back to home, you can get back to the place where you started from. That kind of breadcrumb trail is a well-known design piece that you'll see in many kind of Microsoft platforms, especially SharePoint. It gives you that ability to get back where you started from. And so we're kind of providing that same design language here with the navigation on the left-hand side. In the middle, that's the meat and potatoes of what's going on. We've got primary navigation into each of the actions that need investigation and looking at. First thing I want us to talk about, though, is how do we get a CAPA raised and added to the system. So what we've done here is we've basically, instead of take you away from where you are, we've provided a pop-up modal. And the reason that we've done that is we feel it's a bit more immersive in terms of a user journey. You know that once you fill this in and you've completed your form, you're still going to go back to your dashboard, and that's kind of going to be home base and pull you back. Here, we've got a lot of good examples of, we've got inputs of dates, reference numbers here that we can type in, 1, 2, 3. We can have the type of action that is important to you. So this is all configurable. It's set up in the back end in terms of data. It can either be a corrective action, it can be a preventative action, or an improvement report. But you can change those to the needs and requirements of your business. And the same goes for source, right? Here we've got, where is the source of this action? We've got examples of areas where it might be within our sample organization, but we can change and tweak that to whatever you need. And the same goes for affected business unit and sectors. These are drop downs that we can turn on and off depending on your needs, but it's better to have them than to not have them. And then finally, we've got a reporting period here, which is just separated down P1, P2, P3, one for every month. But we can also change that to be names of the month, or we can break that down into quarters of the year, whatever makes sense for your business needs. And then obviously at the end,
it's worth mentioning that any of those fields we can add and remove in any scenario. And although CAPA processes are very similar, we work with a lot of manufacturing companies which have a lot of kind of ISO processes and things like that, and they all have this type of system. And we can configure those fields so we can have whatever fields we like in there, and even have kind of spin-off tasks which come from that. So depending on what area it's in, it might notify different people, depending on how critical the problem is that we're raising here. That might set a due date, for example, that it needs to get escalations, but we can build all of that kind of automated notification, say, because it's critical, it needs to be actioned within 2 days or whatever it is. We can build that into the background of those workflows, so there's something that's actually keeping an eye on this. So it's not just a case of people are submitting these actions into the ether and they're not going anywhere. They're being documented, they're being stored, and then we've got automations over the top of it, which is looking at all of these, processing them, and making sure that the right people are actually progressing with them in a sensible time frame.
Exactly, 100%. And so that's kind of like your journey into creating a CAPA, getting that into the system. Let's just talk about this dashboard for a brief moment. I've made a big deal about it. This is your home base. This is where you come back to. We've got that primary navigation on the left, but we've also got a sub navigation in terms of the tabs here. So you're not just kind of bombarded with all of the data that is allocated to you. You can look at everything, but you can look at what's active, you can look at what's complete, and you can look at what's due. And what we provide there is a nice little tabbed interface for you to kind of click around and see where you're at. And we give you just these nice little indicators in terms of when you put your mouse on there, you know that you're over that piece. Very, very tiny little design choices that we've made in terms of the implementation, not necessarily out the box and often seen for all Canvas apps, but these are the kind of things that we're focusing on when we're building our Canvas apps, is to make sure that we're completing the functionality but creating a lovely user experience at the same time. Within here, you've got all the capabilities you would expect. So you've got your filtering here on the tabs, but you've also got the ability to search and kind of drill down even further and filter out your results based on whatever you need, depending on when you enter the system. What we're going to do now is we're going to just click into here. So what we have now is kind of the meat and potatoes, essentially, of the CAPA system. We've got it's a stage gate system, so you can see here there's like 9 steps, including 10 steps, including the original complaint, and they've been named D0 through to D8 with the complaint. And under each of one of these sections, different people may be responsible for filling in different types of data at different times. And so what this system allows you to do is basically complete the CAPA at different points and references and allow different people to have access. And within this, you've got to be in the world of CAPA to understand each and every one of these steps. But coming back to what Dougie says, you might have a simplified process that you need, and you might not need even half of what these input fields are, but we can remove those and customize that for your business needs. So again, a very kind of this is a very standard form, but we've tried to present it in an engaging and interesting way. And then instead of just putting all of these form fields onto one gigantic form and making it difficult to navigate, we've given you this sub-navigation at the top there that allows you to understand, okay, this section is responsible for D0, this section is responsible for D1, the complaint is all stored up front. And we've given you a few little kind of nice to have fields at the top, so you can just hide that little navigation bar if you need it or if you don't need it.
We're just going to pause there for a sec, Jay. Couple of questions just coming in. So I should mention as well, if you do have any questions, there's a Q&A tab across the top of the webinar in which you can submit your questions. Just a couple of questions coming in from Joe. One of the first ones, I can answer both of these actually, but the first one, assuming you are using SharePoint lists to store the data, who or how do you handle row level security on the data itself? I know you can hide lists from SharePoint user interface, but a determined user can still get to the list and edit rows, although maybe I'm wrong. So all of these sort of technical questions are kind of, it depends on the solution to a certain extent. If there's a lot of kind of sensitive information, then we can even go as far as not necessarily using SharePoint lists. We could use Dataverse, and then we can use a lot more sort of even column level security if we needed to. A lot of the Canvas apps, they do use SharePoint lists, you're right, because that's one way that basically you can use the licenses you currently have, and you don't need to use more advanced Power Apps licenses and things like that to use Dataverse. So yeah, we can use SharePoint, and there are ways around it. So if there is sensitive data, so say just to give you a real world example, as we're talking about real world, we have built a leave request system in the past before, and that has information in it which technically is sensitive, as in you shouldn't be able to see necessarily other people's bookings and things like that. And we use a SharePoint list to hold that data, and then we have a Power Automate workflow which goes in and it changes item level permissions automatically, depending on who you are and who your line manager is and things like that. So there's always a way around it. And the next question was just around the design. So specific, do we design for specific screen sizes, or do we use containers for a responsive design? Again, it comes back to it depends. If we're honest, responsive design will add additional time onto a build. So we would only necessarily go down that route if it was required. Now, we have done it a lot in the past before. We've worked with organizations which require the same app to work on a tablet and a mobile phone and things like that, and we can build it to be responsive, so you can use it on any device anywhere in the world. However, it will add additional, it's almost like an additional module of kind of development that you need to do to build it in that way. So we always ask the question when we're kind of building apps for our customers to say, do you need it to be responsive? Is there a scenario where it needs to be responsive? Or can you have a desktop version of the app and sometimes a cut down mobile version of the app? There's two actual apps. One's just more simplified than the other and surfaced on a different type of device. So there's plenty of ways around it. You can do both, but I just wanted to call out that it usually adds a level of complexity to make it truly responsive. We are hoping in time that Microsoft will release more templates and more features that will make that responsive a bit easier, but it's still not straightforward, so to speak.
No, absolutely.
Back to you, Joe.
A number of the apps that you see today, they are responsive by design. The CAPA solution is one of those. I would demonstrate it, but it's a bit clunky to do it on a screen share in emulation. But to speak to that very quickly, what that would do is we tend to, where everything is built in a kind of a grid fashion. And what that allows us to do is when you need to compress that down into a mobile view, that allows us to take something that is, in this example, a 3-column layout. It would then condense that down into a single column layer, and that will work very lovely on your mobile devices. And then obviously when you've got tablets like your iPads, that allows us to have a bit more real estate and allows us to kind of almost, where a lot of the time, maintain the same layout in the desktop environment. But to Dougie's point, a lot of the time it's really about understanding what the business needs are rather than just doing responsiveness for responsiveness sake. Not everybody is going to be using mobile devices to access the solution, and where it is a desk-based situation, we'll build a solution that is best suited for that, basically. So I think we've touched everything on CAPA. Just a very short, quick thing on the left-hand side. There's obviously an area for my tasks. So as CAPAs progress through their own life cycle, they will generate tasks for individuals, and that's where kind of your interface is for all of those tasks, and you can access that there. And then from an analytics perspective, that link, it's a little bit smoke and mirrors, I'll be honest. It's just it's a hyperlink out to Power BI, and that's a set of reporting that's provided through that platform to give you all the relevant charts and graphs that you need to be able to report back to your boss. So that's what that one is. Cool. Any thoughts on that, Dougie, or shall I move on to the incident report?
I think we're good to move on.
Excellent. So this kind of dovetails very nicely into what we was talking about, responsive design. Sometimes your applications are just going to be mobile, right? And in terms of when you create a new Power App, traditionally, it just gave you that the first thing it asked you was, are you doing a desktop app or are you doing a mobile app? And this is one of those applications where right from the get-go, when we were creating it, it was like the best place for this app is going to be on a mobile device, because we feel that the type of organizations that need this type of application, they're going to be out in the field, they're going to be doing the jobs that they are doing, and they need an application that is quick to access, quick to use, available on their phone. It's not necessarily going to be the case that someone's going to sit down and fully document a health and safety incident 3 days after the fact. It probably needs to happen within, immediately or very shortly after from when it occurred. So this, in general terms, it's a very simplistic, straightforward app. We've got an interface where we click a new report, and we just have a guided wizard that takes you through step by step to get the key information that is required to report an incident. As you can see here, it's not that I can't think of the right word, Dougie. It's not fantastically novel in terms of what's there on the interface, but it's the information that you require, and we try and simplify that down to allow our users to be able to kind of really get through the process of creating a new incident very, very quickly. So I don't really need to step through this too much, but what I can show you is
the fields are all customizable.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's what you want to capture. It's more kind of, again, showing you the feasibility of in reality what this is replaced. I'll say before, we've worked with a lot of manufacturers, and we work with a lot of people that work in warehouses and things like that. And although we're not necessarily saying that's the only type of industry we work with, it just so happens that it's come up twice. But what those types of workplaces were previously doing is anytime there was an incident or something like that, quite often it was just manually logged by writing it into a paper book, essentially. And the problem with that is that you're not necessarily capturing all the information that you need to capture at that point in time. Or people forget to do it, or they forget to follow up with it. So we worked with an organisation that had this type of system. It was much better polished version of this particular app. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to have a series of follow-ups if certain criteria was met. So there was things, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but there was things like a checkbox which said, did this incident require a hospital visit or something along the lines of that? And if it did, then they wanted basically a follow-up task to go to that person's manager plus some form of health and safety officer or something like that to basically say, obviously this was a reasonably serious incident, and we need to look at it, we need to report on it, we need to actually follow it up. It can't just be something that's left undone. So as I say, we can add more fields to this, we can configure it, and we can put together a more bespoke automations off the back of it, depending on what's selected.
Yeah, exactly. And like we've referenced before, this is kind of your starting point. This is the art of the possible, and we can do anything within reason for the most part, that you need these systems to do to help your business and solve the problems and challenges you've got within your organization. Just to talk very, very quickly about this, there's a couple of things that we've not already seen in some of the other apps. So we've got some placeholder copy text there. So it might not be immediately clear. You might not be logging incidents every day, so you might not know what a report is. So we've got some prompting text for you there of what an incident is and what you need to report and what the outcome is and what the corrective measures are. And we give you all that. So it's not something that has to be front of mind. The application guides you through the process as you're using it. And coming back to the configurability, we've got a drop down here and we can add whatever you need in there for your particular systems. Coming back to the home page of this, we've just got a call to action right at the very front of the application that tells you the amount of incidences that have been reported within the time period that you've got your app configured to. It's a very straightforward, it's a very simple app, but like Dougie says, this is one of those things where it's your classic digital transformation piece. It takes it from pens and papers and notepads and puts it into a centralized area so that you and your organization don't have to put that into a folder somewhere in the business. So
so I'll just pause there a second again. I've just seen a bunch of new questions coming in. So just to answer a few of those for you. So Martin asked, as an example, how long would an app like CAPA take from start to end to build? Now, again, I'm going to give you the typical consultant answer to this is it depends. I know that's not the answer necessarily you want to hear, but Power Apps, because of the way it's built, as in it's a low code solution, meaning we can build apps in days rather than months. It could be as simple as it's a week build, something like that, or it could be bigger than that. It could be much bigger. What we tend to find in most organizations, it's somewhere between the 1 and 2 months kind of mark, depending on everybody wants a slightly different approach, different types of notifications and things like that. So it's somewhere in that kind of remit. But I want to stress with Power Apps, it's much quicker than building your traditional types of applications. Most people, when they think of building an app, they're thinking 6, 12 months, 2 years, something like that to build something. The beauty of Power Apps is it is more like weeks than it is months, to be totally honest. So it's not a massive thing. And because, as I say, we were so many different manufacturing companies that use this type of CAPA approach, we've got a range of different types of ways that we can approach it, different types of apps, and we can use some of those as kind of building blocks as a starting point, because we've seen a lot of it in the past before. Next question: if someone doesn't have Microsoft 365 and is using Google Workspace and they want to use such features, how would you approach this? So this is just 100% Microsoft, nothing to do with Google. Google's the enemy in this scenario. You do need to be on Microsoft 365, so you would have to have a Microsoft 365 license. Now, you don't need, for a lot of what we've discussed so far, and in fact, actually, I think pretty much everything that we're going to show you today, you won't need a Power Apps premium license for this. You just need the equivalent of a business, Microsoft 365 business or enterprise license, which covers Canva's Power Apps. Because, as I say, a lot of the data sources, we use SharePoint and things like that. So you will need a Microsoft 365 license for this. Another question: Do you have many customers request apps for warehouse management? Short answer: yes, we do. And does the apps work on Unitech and Zebra mobile devices and scanners, as you can use APIs to create barcodes or QR codes for SharePoint lists and using barcode readers? So we've done a lot with barcodes in the past before. In fact, we've even used the feature of SharePoint that generates the barcodes. And there was an organization that was, again, warehousing, and they actually had heavy duty machinery, big whacker plates, chainsaws, things like that, and they printed those barcodes on metal. I didn't even realize you could print a barcode on metal, to be honest, and so we did that project. And they I don't know, welded it or something like that to those machines, and then we actually built a Power App which could scan it. Now, within reason, I don't know the exact third-party products and things like that, but those scanners potentially could interact with the same QR codes. But you could also use quite a cheap kind of mobile device with a Power App, and we've built very simplistic Power Apps. That project I was just talking about had an interface very similar to that health and safety app, but if you imagine that square at the top was like a camera where you could see the barcode, and then you could scan it and then say, I'm checking this item out of the warehouse, I'm checking it back in again. Again, because we've got all that data captured, we know who checked it out, the time of day they checked it out, was it ever checked back in again? So within, I think with their scenario, people could have items for about a week, but if it was any longer than a week, then they would want to be following up automatically to say, where is this item? And they can keep track of it. They can keep track of who's got what and for how long and things like that. So yeah, short answer, yes, we see a lot of Power Apps for warehouse type management. And then the other question, will this be recorded, this session? Yes, it will be. And by signing up to any of our webinars, you'll automatically get the recording for it afterwards. So yes, it is recorded, and you will get a link to it within the next couple of days. Sorry for interrupting, Jay. I'll pass back to you now.
No, excellent questions. I think we've covered everything there with this health and safety app. So we'll just move on to the Broken Assets app. It's not the most descriptive of names, but we'll kind of try and explain what this is. So the use case for this solution in this application was there are basically, we've all been to the train stations and we found out when you go and get the train, oh, the lift might not be accessible, or the stairs might be closed for refurbishment. The ticket turnstiles, they might not be available. With all of those things, when they break down, there's actually a whole set of sensors and data that is accessible that allows us as development teams and as makers to interrogate that data and understand where there are challenges going on in railway stations. And so what we've got here is our broken lifts application, is what we call it internally. And the reason for that is its primary use case was initially just to identify if the lifts were working at a train station to help people with disabilities. So if you go to the train station and you need to get to the middle platform and you're in a wheelchair, obviously you need to ensure that the lifts are working to allow you to be able to catch a train. And then we evolved off that idea, and we created this application that exposes a number of different elements that may be working, may not be working. And this is an example of kind of a tip of the iceberg application. This is just a surfacing that data through a Power Canvas app, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the back end to make sure the data is there, it's all relevant, it's all good, and it's up to date. Obviously, as Dougie mentioned right at the beginning, this is using development data. So when we dig into this one, there are going to be a couple of things that you might make you raise your eyebrows, but that's just because the data is a little bit stale because it's on a development environment. So first things first, we've got a rich interface here with a lot of search and filtering capabilities at the top of the page. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to put in my former hometown, Birmingham, do a search, and then that's going to bring up Birmingham Moor Street. That then is indicating to me that there's a couple of events that have occurred onto that train station. So we're going to crack that one open now. And then within here, we can see that the lift status for both of these is active and fine. And if I can click into both of these, it will tell me the sensor ID. And if any of those sensors were reporting back issues or challenges, that would be available in the operational notes. Once an engineer was on site, if there was a challenge or an issue within any of those lifts, the comments would then get populated with engineer comments to say, okay, it was out of order for the last 2 hours. I had to fix it. I don't know how you fix a lift, but I did X, Y, and Z to fix the lift. And then what the information at the bottom does is it tells you, right, this station has lifts, but it isn't step free. The current people that are responsible for this line are at Western, and the train operators are the Pennine Express within the area of Scotland. So obviously we know that Birmingham's not in Scotland, and this refers to the dev data I was speaking to earlier. However, as a proof of the concept of being able to take in rich data from external API sources and surface all that into a front end for frontline workers. Again, this is an application that is responsive, so this works lovely on your mobile device. It also works lovely when you're in the office and you're at your desktop. And this is one of those things where it's reference material that is going to help the day-to-day of people doing really challenging works, such as working in your train stations. Dougie, any thoughts or feelings on that one?
No, I think it's a fantastic example of using almost like external data essentially to surface up to make it easy for people to access. There's been loads of examples in the past before where we built Power Apps, which is going off and connecting to external data via what we call API. I'm not going to get too technical and boring with you, but another example of something like this was a quotation system that we built for a customer who their salespeople were going out and they were providing, I think it was insurance quotes, I think is what it was, for a very niche specific thing. But what they were doing is they were using a Power App, which they punched in all the information about this particular person, this customer, this company essentially, and they would click a button and that would use an API call to go to external places to pull information to get the latest price basically, so they could offer them the very best price for that insurance that they could do in that spot. So it's a fantastic example. I think that there's a lot of scenarios like that we've seen in the past before, pulling in external data in that kind of way. Again, just a couple more questions which are dropping in that I'll just quickly answer whilst I've got the floor. So what someone's asked, Anonymous has asked, can you give us a ballpark of fees associated with building Power Apps for your customers? Again, I'm going to refer to my answer from earlier. It depends. It really does depend. And I know I'm not just dodging things and dodging the kind of standard questions, but literally, and Jay will test this, we work from a range of projects which are worth about £5,000 to about £500,000. So it truly does depend on the scenario, the complexity to it. Most of these apps that we're showing you here today will not be anywhere close to like £500,000. I don't think any of these apps would potentially even be over £50,000, to be honest. But it's very hard to give you a ballpark on what that is without knowing necessarily what the solution is. What we can offer, and we're going to be speaking about at the end, is we can give a free consultation. So if anyone is interested in Power Apps and looking at building that out, we have a no obligation, free 1 hour consultation with our Power Apps experts. Come and meet them, have a word with them, ask them your questions, and there we'll be able to understand what it is you're trying to build, and we'll be able to give you a finger in the air sort of price for what it would take for us to build it. So we'll talk a bit more about that later on. And then the other question was, is there a way to build these apps to work with offline functionality? So forgive me, this is a simple question. No, it's a very, very good question about offline functionality, and potentially sort of Jay can touch on this a little bit in a moment. But we've built a lot of different solutions in the past before which have offline functionality, and there's a lot of people that especially we work with construction companies where they're going out and they're literally building the building, and of course there's no Wi-Fi or anything like that yet there, because everything's just a pile of bricks and dust at that point in time. So unless they're relying on a sort of 4G, 5G connection, but again, sometimes that just doesn't exist. And we've worked with organizations before which work in very remote locations. So again, no internet connection at all. But those apps, what we've built them is the ability to submit data, and you can save that data to whatever device it is that you're using. And then when you get back into a location like the office, or you get back home, or wherever the device can connect back to the internet, it can push it back into the data source afterwards. So definitely you can achieve offline functionality as well.
100%, yeah.
I think that's the question so far. Back to you, Jay.
Cool. Right, so the next app we're going to talk about is our Teams request app. So this is quite interesting because if you go and look through our videos on YouTube, you'll see an earlier version of the Teams request app that we did at Valto. And as a commitment to our products and services, we're always looking to kind of improve and make them better. And this is a really great example of where we've taken something that was good and we've really taken it to the next level. Again, you'll see some common themes that we've already touched on a number of our products in this conversation. That is, we're attempting for a unified look and feel. We're trying to provide you a consistent place to go on the left hand side with your navigation. We've got that header at the top, making it nice and clear what the application is. You got my lovely face in the corner there as well, and then in the middle we've got the main body and the content of the solution. As Dougie was talking there, I just popped in a name of a potential team that we want to create. Should take a step back. The Teams request app is a good way, fantastic way to govern team sprawl within your organization when you're using Microsoft Teams. So it's very easy for people to go into Teams, create a new team for every single conversation project. That can get unwieldy very, very quickly. What this solution allows us to do is creation of teams go through a kind of an approval process to ensure that only people that are, in charge of your infrastructure are allowing for teams to get created and to prevent that team sprawl going on within Microsoft Teams. Here, we've made sure that that team is available. That's gone off and essentially gone to SharePoint and said, is this site available? Because that's what drives if a team is available in the background. And then we've validated that, and that's all good. And we've got a big tick there. And then we're going to fill in all the required metadata to ensure we can fill out that team and make sure that the person that is going to approve or deny this has got all the information that they need. So team description. Why do we need a team? Well, we need a team because we're doing a demo, but I'm sure you would put a better explanation there. Same here for the purpose. And then from
just whilst
here,
you're filling that out, just
sure.
wanted to chip in. So the main kind of purpose that we've seen people using this for is to avoid that kind of team sprawl that you organically get when you're using Microsoft 365. By default, I mean, a lot of people do lock down the ability to create teams to just the IT department anyway, but you tend to find by default anyone can create a team, which is one of the worst case scenarios because you just get this sprawl where I've created a team called HR, Jay's created one called Human Resources, and then we're both wondering why we can't see each other's documents. It's because it's two different teams completely, and it becomes a mess. Once you start then getting that, and that's fine to kind of manage it with just say like an IT department creating those teams. If you've got a smallish company, if you're somewhere in the kind of 50 employees kind of area, that's probably fine so that one person or a small team is managing that. But once you start getting to a bigger organization, you tend to find that it becomes too much of a task just for the IT department themselves to manage this. So what you can use this app for is to kind of delegate that. So you're taking out the physical need to know how to create a team properly because the app's doing that. You're also delegating the decision making of what teams need to be created to the people that should know what teams need to be created. So when you're submitting this and you're selecting which team's owner it is, it could go to different people to approve that request. If I was selecting a team and I wanted it to be under the banner of HR, that could go to our HR director for them to approve it to say that yes or no. Or if I'm saying it's going to be sales related, it could go to our sales director and see if he wants to approve it. So they will know a much smaller grouping of teams. They'll be able to see a list of the teams that have been previously created, and then they can choose to approve or reject it. So we're helping people manage that kind of team sprawl by delegating who is creating the teams. Back to you, Joe.
100%. And with that, I've just filled out the form, and then we would hit submit, and then that would push this request through the approval process. I'm not going to do that now because I think Alex has got enough requests going on at the moment. But what I will show you here is an example of what this would look like after it's been used. So I've been able to request demo site 1, 2, 3, 4. They've all been approved, but I asked for a test site to be provisioned, and that request is still pending. So this interface gives me a very simple at a glance, where's everything that I've requested and at what state is it in. We've also got the filtering in the top right hand corner there so that you can really distill that down into the things that you're particularly interested in at that moment. So that is kind of like an end user's interface. If you're an admin, you also get to see all of the sites and that have been requested, and it basically the same interface, and it comes back to consistency as we was talking about earlier. But here you would see all of the sites that have been requested across your tenant, because you as an admin have got access to that. Also, as an admin here, you can configure the application to be a bit more custom to your branding. So you can just very quickly click this open up, and you can change your company logo that's in the top left-hand corner, and you can also change the tagline that is front and center of the application. Very, very small, nice to have features, but we provide those so you can update and make it really your own application. And then finally, we've got reports on the left-hand side. And so what this is we often find we have a lot of customers come to us and they're like, we need reports to kind of expose and visualize data. But we really don't want to be going into the world of Power BI, because we just need some very simplistic and straightforward reporting. And this is a great example of that. We've just visualized the data that's underneath that we've already seen in that grid view and presented it in a typical grid fashion. Obviously, if you need the ability to kind of drill in and bring multiple data sets together, this wouldn't be the solution that you need. But for something as simple from a data perspective, this works really well for the Teams request app. And that's mostly that application. Dougie, any thoughts or feelings on that one?
No, again, I think it's really beneficial for people to keep track of their teams, to avoid that kind of team sprawl. Just going to go to the question board just to answer a couple more questions that we're seeing come in. One of the questions, is there a limit on the amount of data that can be held on SharePoint list in a gallery on a mobile app? Is Dataverse more suitable for larger data sets? So the short answer is yes. Now on our YouTube channel, there is a whole bunch of different videos, and there's actually a really popular video that's called Choosing a Database for Power Apps. So maybe go and check that out afterwards, or whilst Jay's talking, I might try and dig that out as a link for you. And that explains in much more detail about how to choose the best database for your Power App. The short story of that is, if you're talking hundreds of rows of data, you could even have your data source as an Excel spreadsheet. If you're talking tens of thousands, maybe up to 100,000 rows of data, yes, SharePoint list is fine. If you're talking more than 100,000, you're talking hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of rows of data, Dataverse is where you really need to be. So hopefully that gives you the answer you need. But as I say, I'll try and link you that video that will go into a lot more detail for you. And then another question caught my eye on, could you put a Power App on a website for anonymous access, for example, like a service pricing calculator? Short answer is that yes. So although what we're looking at the moment is called Canvas Power Apps, we can create what are called Power Pages, which are essentially, the short story is, they're external facing websites. And in fact, I'm about to link you a video where we talk a bit more about Power Pages examples and what can be built with that. But definitely we've built solutions in the past before specifically for pricing calculators. One of the main solutions that we've recently launched for a customer, it's actually under NDA, so I've got to be very careful what I say, but it involves a pricing calculator. People go onto their website, dependent on, they punch in some details about something that they're getting valued essentially, and that gives them a calculation to say, we think that this is worth X amount of money, click this button to book a consultation, and then they click the button, and all of that is handled by Power Apps. It goes into the back end, which is Dataverse, and then actually the client we worked with, they had a Canvas app very much like what you're looking at here, where they could then see all of the people that have been submitted, basically the leads that have come in from that website, from that Power Pages, and then they can start processing them. They can pick up the phone, they can start processing them, say, yes, we can make a sale to this person, we can make a sale to that person, blah, 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 and it's all managed. But all that data, although it's entered via the Power Pages as an external facing website, all of it comes in-house, and then it's processed using these types of apps that we're talking about here. Back to you, Jay.
Cheers, Dougie. So what we're going to move on to now is, we've seen a lot of kind of like business applications. We've seen a lot of forms. We've seen a lot of kind of your traditional bits and pieces that you might expect from a web application. What we want to talk about now is, what else can the Power Platform do that you might not expect? So here we've got basically what I've called a website alike It's almost like a website, but it's not. And what's really interesting about this implementation is it gives a great example of how we can have really rich and interactive design features that are all surfaced through Power Platform that are giving you the core functionality that you would expect in a website. So you can see here we've got a very beautifully designed kind of landing page screen. And from here, what you can do is, depending on your role within the organization, you can click one of these links and you will go onto a kind of ever so slightly modified journey in relation to the data that it exposes to you. The whole the next few examples are going to be kind of an onboarding piece that come with a compliance of compliance tests and checks and validation of data that you need to do when you join a company. And I think all of these examples are really great examples of something that's not your standard out the box application. So for here, I'm just going to click as if I was a corporate associate, and then I'm going to scroll down. And what this gives us here is, again, really rich, really beautiful kind of look and feel of a catalog website. But it's more than that. Here I can click off and it'll take me to my YouTube videos. I can click up all these links here and they'll take me to various deep links within SharePoint, and we can look at the resources we've got available. We can click community and that'll take us to any social media that we might want linked up, or things of that nature. And then right at the top, we've also got the ability to type and search across our organization. So again, this is a great jumping off point for you to be really kind of understanding you're in an application and a solution that you might not think is a Power App, but it gives it's very different from your standard kind of look and feel of everything else that we've been looking at previously. There's not really much more to speak on with that, Dougie. Any thoughts from yourself?
I think that the summary for me on this one is I love how actually it looks fantastic. And you say it looks like a website. It is an internal app. It's not a website. It's internal, but it looks like it could be a website because it looks how good it looks. And actually, me and Jay were joking about this when we were coming up with ideas of what we should put into this webinar, that actually how simplistic this app truly is. It's made up mostly of kind of images which are on the page. So we can make this look and feel however we want because we're using a lot of layers of imagery. And in fact, actually on our previous kind of examples video that I've talked about before, one of my favorite ever apps, Power Apps, is actually just almost like 3 images on a page which gets cycled around. And what it was used for is basically like a self-help guide, essentially. It was for people that were looking for internal advice about how they could use certain materials to avoid copyright issues and things like that. And it was a little bit like one of those books that you might have had as a kid, where it was kind of like a story where it would say, if you want to cross the bridge, go to page 5. If you wanted to enter the castle, go to page 10, whatever it was. And you were choosing your own ending, essentially. And that's how that Power App I'm describing worked, where you'd click buttons and it would just bounce you to different sort of pages to eventually get your final page, which would say, hang on, wait, don't publish that article with that information because we'll get into legal trouble, or actually, no, you're fine. But it was just a series of images that people were clicking to get that answer. And it's very similar back to this example here, where it's very effective, but actually it's quite simplistic under the hood of what the look and feel is to achieve it.
100%. And I think that moves nicely on to the next application we've got here. So we're trying something risky here because we're not sure if the animations, so the next couple of applications that we've got are very rich in animations and there's a lot of movement, and we're not 100% sure if that's going to translate well from my computer through the internet, through streaming, and to you guys and girls that are watching this. So fingers crossed you're going to get the full experience, but we'll see. What we've got here is a game, is the long and short of it, that is within a Power Platform. The idea of this is creating an interactive, playful way of allowing users to understand as a business, as an organization, there's things that we have to do on a yearly basis for compliance. And within this is about MFA fatigue. It's like, what are the challenges that you might have around MFA? So first things first, we've got a little help icon at the top corner.
And on this, kind of just to jump in, being a bit more blunt than Jay, this is taking something that was probably a very boring process, if we're totally honest, beforehand. And I can say that because I've worked previously before for very large enterprise banks and things like that. And every year you'd get some boring compliance related thing to sort of evidence that you know about money laundering and things like that, and everybody has to do those when you work at big companies like banks and things like that. Whereas actually the difference is that what they want to do is make something that was actually truly engaging and have it that people were actually going to pay attention to this. So it was actually part of a suite of different products, different power apps, I should say, and they were trying to make it as engaging, as fun and things like that as possible. So they were testing people's knowledge, and people were going through it, but it was almost, as Jay's going to show you, it's a game, it's fun, it's something interesting to do. It's not like a million pages of text that you've got to power through in an afternoon or something like that. So that's essentially the purpose of this. And I think it's a fantastic example because they've taken something which previously, years gone by, probably was quite a boring process, and now it's something that their employees actively look forward to coming out.
Exactly that, yeah. So we're now beginning the game. We've clicked start. It's telling us where we get points. So if we get the phone, we get 10 points. If we get the laptop, we get 5 points. If we get the folder, we get 2 points. But if I accidentally get the alert, I'm going to get minus 10 seconds. And so the idea here is I press play, I press start, and then me and Bertie, we're doing our best to capture the little icons that we need. I'm not very good at this game. So I've got there. Oh, there we go. Lost 2 more points. Carry on. And the whole idea here is I can go left and right, a little bit Space Invaders inspired here, and we've got that all working. And as you can see on that left-hand side, we've got the time counting down, and I'm doing a very bad job at capturing all these things. And you can see the things that really get me excited is in the background, we've got logic that's going on that brings those items down at different rates, different speeds. We make sure all those assets are randomized. And again, it's just a bit of fun about talking. How do we make MFA interesting? And, you know, at the end of the day, you might be standing around the water cooler or on a Teams chat later on and be like, did you play that game with MFA? What was your score? Well, I got 21 points. What did you get, Dougie? And it's today it's a little bit tongue in cheek and it's a little bit playful. I think from an application perspective, what's really lovely here is I really hope the animation is coming across over the stream, but you've got a really rich kind of animation on the left-hand side there. You've got the avatar, the character dancing around. You've got your score. It's all just it's quite literally a bit of fun and games. And then right at the end, we really hit home the point that we're trying to drive at. It's like, if you're triggering your MFA, be aware of it. Never share your username. Never share your password. You know, all those things that we're told over and over again, but we're just presenting that to you in a novel and interesting fashion. So that's game number
and it's actually,
one.
It's a trend that we're starting to see more of now, that people are using things like power apps and things like that to create more engaging, more fun experiences, and even things like praise and recognition and things like that being put through power apps. And I've even seen it where organizations collect points for things, for doing additional work, for getting praises from colleagues and things like that, which they can then use to cash in for like vouchers or experience days and things like that. So people are starting to cotton on to actually, you can make this a lot more fun, a lot more engagement, and boost that kind of employee experience by using something like a power app solution.
Exactly that. And so what we've got here, it's another game, but it's a bit more kind of, it is that little, I think this is the Choose the Adventure one. Let's make sure that I'm talking about that. But fundamentally what we've got here, we've got a little countdown. So you as a user already, you're like, oh, what's that? There's something counting down there. We've got our help here. It tells you what's going on, what the game is all about and why we're doing it. And that's great. So we'll click off there and then we'll move into the actual game. So Bert and Zoe need to access a restricted area in the office. And, you know, there's a bit of law around the game here. We press next, and this is where kind of the reality sets in. So we've got a multiple choice questionnaire. We click the top one. you've got a question. Over 80% of hacking related breaches are caused by weak passwords. Is that true or false? Well, that doesn't sound right. Oh no, actually it was true. So right, we get that right and we move on. And what's the novelty here is you get to choose 2 questions. So you can go down the left path, you can go down the middle, you can go down the right path. And it, again, a little bit choose your adventure. So it shows that what Dougie was talking about previously. And what we've got here is it's a multiple choice situation, right? So it's not always true, false. We've provided the user multiple ways to really test their knowledge. So here we've got what types of authentication can be used for MFA. Well, I think, you know what, I think it is all of the above reading that. So I'll just hit that. Come on, I'm going to pass. And
imagine if you got that wrong.
I'll be in some trouble, mate. I'll be in some trouble. So here we go. Right. I'm not sure. I think I ignore things. Oh, better not ignore things. Better not do that top one either, but we're going to do the middle one. And I'm going to a little bit brute force this so we can get to the end of the questionnaire. No, it's not that one. We're nearly at the lock of those. We can see in the background with our avatars. There we go. Jay figured it out, and he managed to do it in 2 minutes 25 or 27 if you press the link click quick enough. And again, this is that playfulness, right? We can store this in a SharePoint list. Person that answered it within 5 minutes, you might get a £10 Amazon voucher. You know, what path did you go down, Jay, to get your answers right? How many did you get right? How many did you get wrong? All of that good stuff. And again, it really is just being playful and nailing that home right at the end of the application.
We've also advanced this further where I say, because all the answers are submitted. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could see how long it took people to submit them. So if they did do what Jay just did and submit it and managed to do it in 30 seconds, you'd probably follow up with that and say, well, hang on, why it's taking 30 seconds? But more importantly, what we've built out in the on top of this type of system is scoring people based on their knowledge. So if you scored between 0 and 33%, maybe that you need to be booked onto a training course or something like that. So an automated task is sent out to your line manager to say, maybe book them onto a course or something like that. If it's between 33 and 66%, maybe it's okay, you need to improve this and you need to repeat this in 3 months or something like that. So again, it sends you some automated links to say, go and look at this training material, things like that. Or if you passed, great, fantastic, gives you a pat on the back and maybe some additional points for collecting afterwards or something like that.
100%. And finally, we've got our final game. It's very similar to the 2 that we've just been looking at, but I love it all the same. So I wanted to bring it to the floor to give a demonstration of it. This is to basically figure out phishing emails. Same cadence, same idea. It's we set you up. We've got a playful premise, and then as a user, you have to pick one of these icons. Hopefully, the animation is coming across lovely, but you've got the items in the sea, and we're going to fish them out of the sea. We're going to click one. There's Bertie's hook, just pulling that out. And then what we've got there is an example of a text message that you might receive. And now, do you think that is a legit email, a legit message, or do you think it's a problem? And then so we do that. Great. That does look like a fish. And what I really like about this is really richly branded. You've got the animations in the background. You've got this really rich branding on the right hand side, and then you've got the actual content that left hand side, the kind of the boring stuff. This is why these things exist, but the reason they exist is very, very important. So yeah, that's that game as well. So if we just click through there, it takes us back to the next set of questions, and we figure out, does this look like a fish or does this look like a friend? And then again we move on. That is pretty much all of the examples I've got, Dougie.
Brilliant. No, I think that's really interesting, and I really like finishing off on those ones which look really good, and you can see the power of what you can do with Power Apps. So yeah, just Jay, whilst you open up that PowerPoint, putting that back on screen, if you just go to the next slide for us. So talking a little bit about kind of what we can do. So there's been loads of questions in the chat about different things. Obviously, people are interested in Power Apps and maybe got questions, not too sure which way to turn. We offer a free Power Apps consultation. So that is with one of our experts, a member of Jay's team. Will be able to assist and basically talk to you about what is Power Apps and what you can achieve with it. A lot of people have asked about how much does it cost to build things, that sort of stuff. But again, we need to understand what it is that you want to build. So book that free consultation with us. We'll have a conversation with you, understand what you're trying to do, give you some free advice, make sure that you're pointed in the right direction. And we could also give you the say a no obligation quote to say, if we were to build it, how much would it cost for us to build? So yeah, the link for that is both in the chat and it's also in the QA. Just valto.co.uk/YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube afterwards as a recording, the link will be in the description below. I realise we've kind of overrun a little bit now, and in fact, actually, we've actually answered all of the questions. So we've answered them as we've gone along. So I just want to thank you very much for your time. As I say, if you have any questions, you'd like to book that consultation, use that link in the chat below. We'll send out the recording to everybody that's watched this live shortly, and also keep your eyes peeled for future webinars from Valto. Thank you for your time.